Now, let's take some time to debrief the case. First, it's important to recognize that the onboarding process can be a stressful but exciting time for both the manager and the new employee. The manager has probably been understaffed for at least a brief period of time, and while they're very likely excited to have this new team member, they have almost certainly taken on additional responsibilities before this person was hired. Meanwhile, the employee is probably very excited about starting in this new role, but is also feeling some nerves about what this big change will entail for them. This combination of excitement and stress is what makes the onboarding process so critical. Did you know that 20% of turnover happens in the first 90 days of employment? Imagine putting so much time, effort, and frankly money into bringing a new employee to your team only to lose them in the first 90 days. Not only is this frustrating for the manager, but it can also start to take a toll on the morale of the rest of the team. The onboarding process is a manager's chance to build a strong base to keep their new employee engaged, not just for the first 90 days, but for the long haul. Regular check-ins, ideally daily in the first week, are critical to developing an open path of communication and getting in front of challenges before they escalate. Now, let's talk about balancing that workload. Very few employees, if any, are able to start a new role with minimal assistance. This can be challenging for a manager that has other responsibilities to accomplish. The best way to balance the needs of the new employee with a manager's own needs is to share the onboarding responsibilities. After a manager builds an onboarding plan, they should think about how they can delegate some of the tasks. Odds are that the manager doesn't need to handle every piece of it. Both other managers and coworkers can be enlisted. By spreading the responsibilities, a manager will be able to keep onboarding from becoming a full-time job in and of itself. Let's adjust the scenario a bit too. How would a remote working arrangement change things? As we see remote work becoming more and more common, it's important to recognize that some strategies need to be adjusted. First, a remote manager needs to make a stronger effort to ensure that their new hire is building relationships. There are a lot of ways to do this, including virtual happy hours, scheduling one-on-one video calls with incumbent team members, and so much more. Second, a remote employee probably won't have every hour of their day scheduled when they first start. It's so important to give them independent work that is relatively easy to jump into, so they aren't stuck sitting, waiting for an email to come through. One other interesting note in this case is that the employee was hired during a particularly busy time for the department. Knowing that this was a busy time, some managers might make the choice to delay the employee's start date so that they'd have more time to devote to the process, and so that the employee won't feel quite so overwhelmed. If that isn't an option, this would be an important topic to cover during the interview process. Making sure the employee knows what they will face when they start is appropriate for transparency and for setting expectations. Asking them behavioral interview questions can offer you good insight into how they will handle starting during a time of heavy activity. Consider questions like these. Tell me about a time that you have had to work through a stressful situation at work. Or perhaps, share with me an example of a time that you had to work through a challenge with minimal assistance. I bet you thought of a lot of ideas for other things that could have been done to make the new hire more comfortable. There are a lot. Onboarding isn't an exact science, but it nonetheless deserves focus, priority, and an understanding that onboarding is a team activity and not solely the responsibility of any one manager or team member. I always like to remind managers that when they're preparing for their new employee to come on board, they should remember that at the end of the day, the first week, the very beginning, that employee is going home and sharing their experience with someone, a parent, a partner, a friend. What do you want them to say about your company, your team, and about you?